Welcome to For Real I Do with Brittany Ellis, the unfiltered side of weddings. From planning truths to vendor insights to navigating design, culture, and family dynamics, this is for couples who crave clarity and vendors ready to elevate. Your insider pass with just a little oversharing. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Real I Do. Thank you for joining me again to listen, learn, and discover more ways that you can make more informed decisions on your wedding planning journey. Have you ever been on a first date and the chemistry is really good? Like you're just vibing, they're saying all of the right things, you're getting along really well. And then after that, maybe they don't ghost you, but it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's like you have chemistry, but ultimately maybe you find out some things about them that ultimately are just not in alignment, right? Maybe you don't share the same values or your priorities are just not in alignment. Well, it's sort of like that when you're shopping for your wedding vendors. While you're not going to, of course, like walk down the aisle and get married to these people, you are ultimately entrusting them with basically one of your core memories, right? So in your entire life, you're going to have a series of core memories. And your wedding weekend certainly is going to be one of them. So I want to be clear that this podcast is really talking about breaking down that first meeting because the first meeting is about chemistry. Obviously, it's about connection. It's about how a vendor makes you feel when you're on a Zoom call with them or on the phone with them. Do you feel seen? Do you feel understood? Do you feel like you could trust them? Feelings matter, right? But ultimately, chemistry and feelings alone are not enough because the way a vendor makes you feel has to be backed by systems, tools, frameworks that can actually support the wedding weekend. So today we're really breaking down how to read that first meeting with clarity. So connection first, but structure second, right? And how to know when they are both in alignment for you to make the right decision if you're going to proceed forward. So the first things I want to talk about are the feelings. And the feelings obviously are the ones that come first. We work in a very highly emotional industry. I like to say that obviously we're like very much professionals in our craft, but when you're planning weddings, there's a lot of emotions involved. And so like finding the balance and all of that can sometimes be tough, right? But in the right meeting, you really should feel at ease. You should feel heard without over explaining and really just confident in the conversation. So you should feel like the person across from you, if you're on Zoom, understands you and not just your event. Right? They really get that, maybe you're both doctors and you really just don't have the bandwidth to plan your wedding, and they understand like what that feels like to maybe work. Maybe they don't understand like exactly what it's like to work like your crazy schedule, but they at least have the connection with you to be empathetic and that they have the structure and framework to support you because connection really is what allows you to trust someone. And ultimately, without that, nothing else is going to work. So if the chemistry is off, no amount of experience is really going to fix that, right? You have to vibe with the person that you're ultimately going to want to proceed forward with on your wedding weekend, or at least you should, right? The second segment is what real chemistry actually feels like. Okay. So chemistry is not charm. It is not excitement. It feels like honestly just an organic back and forth. You're aligned on, the framework and the values and the tools that you're going to bring forward to make sure that this event goes off without a hitch. Your shared language around priorities. You're not working to be understood. You're building on something that is already aligned, right? And that is the ease is kind of your first signal that you're in sync. And really when chemistry is supported by structure is the third kind of segment of this like magic ingredient mix that we're talking about here is that once the connection is there, that's where you can kind of look deeper, right? Because it's like, okay, great. I love this person. I connect with them. I love their energy. They've got the experience. Check, check, check. Now let's take a look at their systems, right? Because strong vendors do not make you feel good as much as they make you feel supported. They may actually at times tell you things that you really don't want to hear, but maybe need to hear so that you can make the most informed decision. I know a lot of times there's things that maybe me and my team say to a client and it may not be what that client wants to hear, but it's honest to God. It's like the truth. We need to talk about it. Most often than not, it's contingency plans, right? It's like, hey, what if knock on wood, what if we run into inclement weather? Do we want to get into tenting? Are we flipping ballroom space? And those are conversations a lot of couples don't want to have, right? Because they just envision it's going to be a perfect day outside and there's going to be no weather issues. And, but it's understanding like working around those contingency plans. So strong vendors really aren't the people that are just going to give you all the feels. Like, of course, you want to have a great relationship. And I like to think we have a really great relationship with pretty much all of our clients, which is fantastic. But they really do just make you feel supported and make you feel guided. So you should really notice sort of like their clear approach on how they work, how they communicate, the thoughtful tools and systems that they reference naturally. So are they going to be working on like a workspace portal? Is it all mostly via email? Do they like to text you? But confidence is in their framework without having to over explain it. So structure should feel really grounded and not rigid. And so if you like their approach, right, and you resonate and connect with their tools and their system, then trust can ultimately grow because trust is earned, right? That's kind of earned throughout the course of your relationship that you see that, oh, yeah, I was able to count on them for that. Yep, they guided me in the right direction there. Yep, totally understand what they mean by that perspective. So it's really just making sure that you're like getting these little mini wins with them on a regular basis through their structure and guidance that they're providing. Ultimately, this boils down to when you are having consultations with your vendor team or your potential vendor team, the questions that really matter. So I've outlined a couple questions that I think will help you to understand whether their systems that they're sharing with you on a consultations and the relationship can actually deliver the experience that you want. Some of the first things that you really should be talking about or asking is how do you typically support a full wedding weekend like ours, right? So you're really listening to understand how are they going to go about approaching your event. It's almost like if I was going to be hiring, and I've done this before, if I'm going to be hiring someone new in my office, before I just like say, yep, you're perfect. I loved you in the interview, said all the right things. It's almost like I'm going to give them a sample project. And while you may not be able to like obviously have your planner work that you haven't hired yet, a sample project, I think you can almost do scenario based runs with them on a phone call, right? You can say, like, how would you approach this timeline? Well, how would you approach this venue? What are you thinking initially design wise for this? And again, I don't think it has to be the perfect answer. And it may not be exactly what you were looking for. Maybe they even pull something out of the box. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about it from that perspective, right? But it kind of gives you an understanding on is this person creatively thinking or type A thinking or, approaching this in the way that we feel like would be best. Another thing to ask is what tools or processes do you use to keep everyone in alignment, right? So this is a clear answer to signal organization and accountability. How are they organized, right? I mean, just pure point blank asking them, how do you keep track of all the ongoing tasks and things to that end? I'll tell you a quick story. I would say about maybe 5 years ago or so, we were still working on primarily Google Sheets. So Google Sheets, basically we had what we called the Taskmaster. And the Taskmaster was basically a robust Excel spreadsheet per client that obviously had like kind of like our checklist on a month to month basis. It had our timeline, it had our vendor contacts, it had everything on this Excel spreadsheet, right? And so we kept a really good log in terms of like the status updates per column. And while in hindsight, it was great, it was still organized, it was just a lot of information, right? It was a lot of information in one location. And it was, I feel like something that definitely needed an upgrade, right? Because I just feel like gone are the days with AI, y'all, that you should be receiving like 30 emails from your wedding planner. And so if they don't really have like a system or a platform that they use, I think it is a little bit of a red flag because there's just so much options and apps and AI available now that, I mean, it's like for me, I'm like, I love it. I mean, literally, I'm probably the crazy person that's like during even my free time, like I love to go in there and like revise SOPs and like update the framework and like because I'm always about like ultimately what is the client facing experience, not my way or the highway, but like is this confusing for the client? Does this feel easy for the client? And I think that ultimately just understanding tools and structures are really big things. So just make sure to ask them that, right? Another question to ask is how do you collaborate with other vendors during the weekend? This is really important for you to lean into because you may or may not have a preference, but if you are the type of client that you want full control over the vendors that you hire, I think pay close attention to the response here. And maybe I am leaning more into like planner conversations, but I think that this can also be like if you're talking to a photographer or you're talking to a hair and makeup artist, like how do they collaborate with other vendors? Because I think that right away they're going to let you know, number one, if there's anyone that maybe they like don't work with, maybe they can share with you, like, I only, like, from a planner perspective, they might say, hey, I actually only work with these vendors. And honest to God, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that model because I get it. They're able to turn and burn and curate a really great product time after time. So it's almost like, why would we like explore another option when this is tried and true for us? I get that. I do. But I think it's like important to know, are they willing to collaborate with other people that you bring to the table? Or is it only going to be like that planner's pool of people? Like, how is that going to work? And just really thinking about between the two of you as a couple, how important is it that you have full control over all your vendors, or would you rather go with somebody that already has existing relationships? So just ultimately, like, how does that play out for you? Because I think it's just going to reveal experience, their relationships, how open and flexible that they're going to be in terms of like the planning process with you and things to that end. And another item is, where do couples usually feel the most supported when working with you? I actually really love this question. I've gotten this question before. When you're asking your planner or any vendor for that matter, where do they feel most supported when working with you? Honest to God, I like to think that our couples obviously feel supported the whole time. You feel supported from onboarding onwards. Really feel that they feel the most support when it comes wedding day and all those conversations and all that timeline development and all that back and forth for that period of time that we plan together comes to fruition, and they're able to just be like, "Oh my God, their team totally is on top of it. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to micromanage anything. My family's being taken care of. They're not running around a million miles a minute." If that answer matches how you already feel about them, going back to that initial chemistry and their approach and their process and their tools, and where you feel like you ultimately are really looking for your end game with them, right? Like, if that's all in alignment, then it's like ding, ding, ding. You have a winner. I mean, ultimately, you don't need to shop like 20 different people to get your answer. I think it's really just being intentional with the people that you want to have a conversation with and asking them more intentional questions, right? So I think that in terms of like vendor relationships and really why they matter and why I felt like recording a podcast episode was supportive on this is because it always happens in engagement season or in the early part of planning or in the vendor hiring part of planning. There tends to be a lot of like, how do I say? It's like when you go to a mall and you're like walking around the mall and you're like popping in all the stores and you're starting from I don't know, I'm the weirdo that like starts from the back of the store and I like have to look at everything. That's actually why I don't really like to shop, because it's almost exhausting. I feel like if I'm there and I have to look at everything to make sure that I've like I don't know, like I've looked at everything to see what I actually want to purchase. And then usually it's like nothing because I'm like tired at the end of it, which is so funny. That was like very different from when I was in my 20s. But I think that more is not more when it comes to vendor consultations. I think that it can really start to almost feel like when you're dating and you're swiping, right? You're just like, it's just like at some point, it's just like you're going through the motions. You're not really being intentional anymore. The people that you're actually going to like schedule a date with, schedule a consultation with. So vendor relationships, in my opinion, really matter the most because, again, it's similar to like if you were trying to start a relationship new or like out there in the market and you're like, I don't know, you're on your phone and you're on like one of those dating apps and you just kind of keep swiping and you're having all these conversations with people, but maybe it's just not hitting the mark or whatever. I think that ultimately, when you do find the person that you have a conversation with, everything clicks, they're answering your questions, and you feel very much like, not like it's forced, because I think anyone can be on their best behavior, but it's almost like you're in alignment. Like you're seeing eye to eye. If you're a type A and they got like a whole system that's like speaking to your soul and it makes you happy, it's like that might be the person that you should go with. But truly and honestly, outside of like systems and tools and chemistry, like the relationship really matters because, again, this is a core memory for you. This is a once in a lifetime weekend. And I think it's just really important that you do have all the feels with your vendors because it just makes for the experience to feel that much more exciting, because ultimately vendor relationships are not necessarily about preference. They really are just about that trust that's built throughout the planning process, those conversations, that excitement level grows, but that you have the confidence in their execution. Because if you've gained trust with them in all those months planning with them, then you know that they're going to be able to deliver your wedding weekend. It's almost just going into it with you, just have that faith that you know that this person's got your back. And that's why this relationship matters so much. And I think just like the final thing in conclusion is at the end of the meeting or the end of consultation, asking yourself, number one, did I feel a genuine connection? Okay. Do I trust their approach and their framework? Because if you can like somebody, but if they don't have all the things that you actually need, you're kind of just setting yourself and them up for a disservice and a not successful relationship from the start, right? It's like, they're so cute. I want to make it work. It's like, if you don't trust their approach and their framework, right, then ultimately you're just kind of like going against the grain. Can I picture them guiding not just us, but our families? Let's get real, y'all. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And even if bride and groom are going to take the primary front seat when it comes to planning, when it comes to wedding weekend, family's going to be there. And guess what? If you have a planner that didn't take them into consideration, you're going to have a lot of questions and a lot of confusion come wedding weekend. And again, if they don't have like systems and tools and frameworks and they're asking, quite frankly, they're asking the right questions, because I planned over 300 Indian weddings and it doesn't make me an expert. I mean, it does in a lot of ways, but I humble myself in this sense that every family is different. I think that I have the knowledge and the experience that my team just knows the questions to ask so that we can make sure that we go into the wedding weekend like those things have already been hashed out. So when chemistry and structure align, the decision really just feels like the right one, right? It's just like you just feel it. It's like you just know, right? When they say you just know, you just know. It's the same thing with your vendor relationships. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel forced. It feels organic. It feels really clear. And ultimately, your wedding weekend deserves both connection and competence. You want partners who make you feel comfortable and are capable. Chemistry opens the door, but systems are really what makes you actually want to proceed forward with them, or it should. So again, if you feel like this episode was supportive for you, I would really recommend that you subscribe and follow us. We're trying to build our subscriber list this year in 2026. And I hope that this content has been really supportive for you, because I know how daunting it can be when you're, researching or looking for vendors to hire, but you just really want to be intentional with the questions that you're asking, because they can go, sometimes I get on consultations and I don't even talk about necessarily like the back end about like Eventrix and like all the team members that we have and our approach. It's almost just like sometimes it's just getting to know couples and really just knowing if it's going to be a good fit, because sometimes it's not. And sometimes I'll be very frank to say like, hey, I think that what you're trying to do and what we offer is not aligned. And that's okay too. I think it's important that both people feel that connection and both people feel like it's the right fit, because ultimately you're just going to feel that and you're going to be able to trust everything that they're ultimately sharing with you that they're able to do.